The post-Renaissance is generally considered the weakest era in all of Disney. I mean, yeah, the wartime movies were trashed, but no one besides me has ever even seen those movies. And they shouldn't. So no one even acknowledges them, which is probably for the best. But even so, I don't really get it. Yes, this era had more than one or two missteps. Yes, it can't be called the best era. Yes, I don't love it. But for whatever reason, this wasn't that bad. Though expectations probably changed my opinion on certain eras too. Like, when I walked into the Bronze Age, I was relatively excited. But then this dragon gargoyle hybrid started talking and I wanted to die, whereas with this era, my expectations were a bit lower, since I knew that there were a bunch of mediocre films, but I had a good time with most of them. Again, not saying these films are perfect, but there's so many underrated should-have-been classics in here, especially as we get closer and closer to the end of the list. Also, I know that there's a lot of arguments as to when the post-Renaissance ends, but I'm just gonna say the revival begins with Princess and the Frog, because that's when there was a shift from more gag-based comedies to more traditional Disney musicals. So let's start with the second worst Disney movie ever made. Thank you, Black Cauldron, for filling that spot. So, this movie is really bad. I feel like that's a pretty non-controversial statement. Like, what even is there to say about Chicken Little at this point? It's one of the worst Disney movies ever made, and everyone knows that. I feel like everyone knows that this disgusting pile of garbage is a disgusting pile of garbage.
It's true that the eyes are glowing and the tentacles and maps with planets with exits through them.
You know what? It's still overrated. This film tries to be obnoxious and ridiculously stupid to appeal to 2-year-old babies and nobody else. There's literally a scene where Chicken Little stares up at the skies and says, "Please make my life better, Star." Like, am I supposed to feel something here? You seriously want me to care about this obnoxious kid being bullied by these one-dimensional twats? Only being supported by his 2 best friends that are basically there to make the 4-year-olds laugh? But you see, that's what this movie is. It is just useless, unfunny, unenjoyable fluff that only exists to serve a cynical company at their most hated time. Except for now, I guess. Nothing is competent in this movie at all. It's just stupidity made for kids that doesn't have any genuine moments of pleasure or even silence. These voice actors are literally screaming their obnoxious dialogue in your face, and it's incredibly stupid. Especially when all of a sudden this movie decides it wants to take itself seriously and have emotional moments, or moments where this film is actually trying to be a serious invasion movie, as if the laughable tone and emotional beats were not enough. To be clear, there's nothing wrong with having a movie that's made for kids. I mean, if I don't like Barney the dinosaur, that's fine. But the fact that this movie seems to pride itself in being like classic Disney while missing all the elements that made those movies special is just pathetic. You see, in a good movie like Beauty and the Beast, they take the time to set up the relationship and the story feels like it knows where it's going. There's a really great scene in that movie where the Beast has just rescued Belle from wolves and they just talk.
Just hold still. Hold still, it wouldn't hurt as much.
Well, if you hadn't have run away, this wouldn't have happened.
If you hadn't frightened me, I wouldn't have run away. By the way, thank you for saving my life.
I mean, Belle has some pent-up anger, but at the same time, she makes really good points on how he treats her. It's a great moment that makes the emotional conclusion have a ton of payoff. But this movie never really takes the time to make us care about anything. This little chicken is literally hated by everyone, and they should hate him. He's not charming in any way. He's just an annoying chicken who has no personality to speak of. So why would I want to watch him? This is the same problem I have with Cars 2. Mater never actually does anything funny or even useful. He just gets tangled into the life of some spy cars because reasons. You can't also have an emotional beat where he realizes that people think he's stupid, because what does that have to do with anything? Look, I know a ton of people love this film for some reason. Maybe they're just blind or deaf or both. Or maybe they really wanted a baseball alien movie. If people like this, I'm happy for them. But we think you're crazy. Good news, everyone. We have a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence. The post-Renaissance officially has not one, but two terrible movies. Home on the Range is a weird-ass movie. I mean, the plot is basically a cow rustler who yodels in order to force cows to do his bidding. That's right, in the weirdest Disney scene of all time, and also easily the best part of the movie, this cow rustler sings about how he likes rustling these cows in a song called Yodel Adel Edel Idle Loo. Yes, that's literally the title on the official Disney YouTube. Like I said, this movie's weird. Unfortunately, just like Chicken Little, this movie is also a painful experience. Hooray! Here's the thing. I wouldn't even mind this movie that much if it was at least funny. I mean, that scene was weird and I couldn't believe what I was watching, but at least it was funny. It's not smart or good, but it's fun because it's just so stupidly bonkers. But the bulk of this movie is just white noise. After that scene, you kind of expect there to be a little more pizzazz and identity, but it just kind of feels like a boring cow slapstick movie. How do you expect me to care about these idiot cows? I want them to be captured. Literally everyone in this cow posse is so one-dimensional that it's comical. Let's see here. You've got the cow with the heart of gold, which is my least favorite cliche ever. The annoying ditzy one that's supposed to be funny. The twin henchman. And the bad guy who thinks he's intimidating. Oh, I have terrible movie bingo. Just like Chicken Little, this is an irredeemable, unfunny kids movie that no one should see. The only reason I put it above that movie is because of this. This one scene. This movie has one good scene. One scene that I will remember and rewatch whenever I feel like seeing something so amazingly bad. Which is more than I can say for you. Alright, so stay with me, guys. Dinosaur is like if you went to the zoo to see lions, but the only thing they do is stay on their rock. So you wait there a bit thinking, okay, maybe they're gonna move one time, but nothing happens. They stay there on their rock doing nothing. And then you wait 2 hours and nothing happens, and that's Dinosaur. Oh, what's happening now? They're still walking. Okay, well, once they're done walking, we can get to the actual story and watch the movie. Oh no, they're still walking. Huh. It's almost as if this movie is bad. And that really sucks, because unlike Chicken Little and Home on the Range, this movie had a lot going for it right from the get-go. First of all, the animation is actually really impressive. I don't think I've ever seen something photorealistic with animated character designs. You'd think this would be weird, but it actually worked out really well. And man, these landscapes are so textured. Like, you could touch that egg. It also has one really amazing scene with the first-person shot of all the dinosaurs, and a great scene with this monkey in the vines. I really thought they were going to build something great. Unfortunately, this is basically the brown dinosaurs walking movie. Not an actual thing that anyone needed to see. I just feel like I got nothing out of this experience, even more than Chicken Little. I mean, at least it was useful to see a movie where everything fails. Let's move on before I get bored watching these clips again. Brother Bear wasn't the worst thing in the world. It's still bad, don't get me wrong. I mean, it has something in common with Brave, so like, how good did you expect it to be? It still has a bunch of really stupid characters like everyone. I don't know, maybe they aren't good because this movie has that thing in like every kid's movie nowadays where there's a setup, a journey where a bunch of useless things happen, and then we rush to the ending. The only movie that I have ever seen that does that trope well is The Princess and the Frog. I hate the journey they go on in general. It's boring and it barely has any interesting touches, unlike the stuff directly before it. I also can't stand the cliches in this movie. From the crazy old character to the I don't speak bear to the slapstick to the happy montages. Man, is it boring. Well, at least it's not actively terrible like a certain other bear movie. I really like a lot of the nature scenes, and the 2D here is amazing. Plus, in general, this movie gives off a real sense of wonder and atmosphere. But that's just cosmetics. No one goes to a movie just to see great animation. The meat of this movie is just boring and bad. Huh. That's like all of the movies we've talked about so far. You know, for a movie called Treasure Planet, They sure took their time to get to the treasure planet in the first place. Anyway, Treasure Planet is pretty good. On the surface, this movie seems a lot like Atlantis, and I know that a lot of people just lump them together. There is one thing I noticed though. Treasure Planet is not as good. As much as I really wanted to love this movie for being a fun adventure about discovering a new planet and the world is great and the alien designs blew me away, this movie has the weakest story out of any John Musker or Ron Clements Disney film. Which is really disappointing because it also has some of the most creative world building they've ever put out. Just the idea of a world populated with ships and docking bays and a bunch of people from different planets, it's pretty amazing. Is what I would say if this movie actually focused on those things. Because yes, when it comes down to it, Treasure Planet is just another two people who don't get along at first, but have to learn to be friends. It is literally not more deep than that for 90% of the movie. The betrayal scene with John Silver is so unbelievably contrived that it hurt me. Like, Jim hides in a barrel and John Silver starts berating him, something he's literally never done in this film. Then he cries and then they make up, like, what kind of recycled Illumination Secret Life of Pets garbage is this? We spend so much time with these two and not enough on their rivalry with the crewmates that I actually start dozing off. But then, finally, the story takes an unexpected turn and everything is better. Jim and Silver are split, which is great. The cast of characters is... oh no.
Oh, this is fantastic! A carbon-based life form come to rescue me at last! I just want to hug you and squeeze.
Ben is the #1 worst character on this entire list. His lines are actual agony and the delivery makes them so much worse. Okay, that's all I have to say. In terms of animation, this movie also ranks reasonably high. A lot of that has to do with, again, the character designs, but the lighting is also something really special. Better than Brother Bear, even. Yeah, I don't really have much to say about this movie. I like it, and I hope that when I rewatch it, my opinion changes. But for now, this is one Disney movie I really don't like as much as a lot of people. In an era with so many underrated movies, Emperor's Groove seems to be the one that everyone likes the most. And to some extent at least, I get it. This movie does have the snappy animation, comedic relief, and fun characters that makes Disney. It has the emotional core and devastating lows in a lot of other top-tier Disney films. But is it a masterpiece? Is it Lion King? That's a bit much. Disappointing because I really wanted to absolutely adore this movie. It's still good, but it's no Melody Time, I'll say that much. I will never stop until Melody Time gets some sort of recognition. The relationship between Pacha and Kuzco is genuinely good, but it feels a lot more situational than a lot of the other Disney relationships like Cat and Dog from Bolt. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but... Alright, before I say anything, I just want to make sure that everyone understands that I still love Ratatouille, okay? I don't want my Ratatouille lover card revoked. But this relationship kind of feels situational like Linguini and Remy. Honestly, being killed by the Ratatouille police wouldn't be that bad. I don't know, I just feel like it's pretty convenient that Kuzco just happens to stumble across the guy that he was gonna kick out of his house. I know that's like the definition of karma, but even so, that's always annoyed me. Even throughout the movie, I just don't buy that they grow to care for each other. It always feels like Kuzco needs Pacha because he doesn't know how to get safely out of the jungle, not because he enjoys Pacha's company. It's kind of like Woody, honestly. Both characters are just too annoying for too long for me to really enjoy their presence, and their friendships are hard to believe for that same reason. Pacha is a really great character though. I like how he feels like Sully in this movie, or maybe that's because they have the same voice actor. And even though he puts up with Couscous for a long time, he still ends up being funny, a great father, and overall a really nice guy.
He seems like a nice guy.
Yzma and Kronk are pretty good too. While I don't think Yzma is necessarily the best villain in this era, she's probably the most entertaining. And she does serve her purpose well to the story, albeit in a very obvious and not really interesting way. Kronk is always a delight. I love his innocence. I think it's a really great contrast to Yzma. They make an amazing duo. The scenes with them are the best part of the movie. Which isn't to say that this movie is bad. I still think most of the scenes are good. To me, this is a solid film with pretty interesting characters, but not much else. It doesn't really stand out compared to the rest of the catalog, but I'm still glad I watched it. So apparently everyone falls into two very distinct categories with this movie. Either you love it, or you hate it. Atlantis: The Lost Empire is pretty good, but is it a 10 out of 10 masterpiece that everyone should go see? No. On the other hand, is it a terrible movie that no one should see? Also no. Honestly, this movie has so much hate and love surrounding it that the whole time I was like, really? You're all getting this passionate about a pretty average Disney movie? The only thing that really popped out to me was the story. It was really interesting, and the whole imperialism angle seemed weird at first, but it was really well handled. A key reason being that there was no in-your-face preaching where one character says, "This guy is clearly evil and we hate him," which I feel like modern Disney would do. Okay, I know everyone hates Disney for some reason, but don't worry, they did bring me the best thing ever, so, you know. You win some, you lose some. Anyway, this imperialism angle is great because instead of us being spoon-fed information, we're just shown what people can do with too much power. They can wipe out entire cultures and societies. They can completely destroy their way of life, and watching the main characters overcome that is fantastic. The animation is also really something special. All the textured designs and the 3D backgrounds that pop are amazing. It's like that one short from Fantasia, but for the entire movie. Seriously, all the blue and red light is really something to behold. And the climax is absolutely perfect. Definitely in the top 3 Disney climaxes ever. Everything comes together here. Aside from those two things though, this movie doesn't really have much going for it. Milo is just a boring inventor that wants to find Atlantis, which at first seems a little interesting until you realize that he literally has no reason to even look for Atlantis. It would have been great if Milo had shown us what he had researched about this place, but the whole time I felt like the only reason he was on this quest was A, to find this MacGuffin, which is a great creative motivation, and B, to finish his dead father's work. Yikes. Even after that's over with though, he's just a nerd stereotype. I kinda start to understand why these other characters don't like him. As for them, they're fine, but they really don't do much. I liked a lot of their background stories, but man, why didn't we just get more of them? If this movie had fleshed them out just a bit more, it would have made all the difference. Worst character though definitely goes to the villain. Like, I thought Rescuers Down Under had a generic villain, but oh boy, this guy is much worse. I don't remember his name or even a single line of dialogue because he's just so blatantly obvious. Everything that he does is so arrogant and self-indulgent that when he outsmarts Milo, I was genuinely laughing. Actually, this was the moment when I realized that Milo was not going to work for me as a protagonist. I mean, he's supposed to be a smart scientist, but he can't see that this mustache-twirling villain is against him. Don't worry though, this movie is still plenty of fun. It's not something anyone needs to rewatch or even watch a first time, but I still enjoyed it. But why does everyone care so much about this movie again? Out of every single Disney movie that I have ever ranked so far, Meet the Robinsons is the one that I cannot decide for the life of me if it's good or amazing. My first watch through, I said that it was a practically perfect masterpiece that was funny, heartwarming, and genuinely really cute and sweet. My second watch through, I said it was an okay movie that had a lot of problems. And now, I don't really know. Easily the highlight of this film is the comedy. Wilbur has some hysterical lines, and he's overall the best character in the film by far. Goob may not be a king candy, but he was also relatively enjoyable. And his backstory was okay. I mean, it really does go the way you expect it, but it can't be called an awful twist. But now we have a sequence of scenes that people don't really like. The shenanigans with the family. I'm gonna be real. I genuinely love every single scene with the family. I didn't think it went off the rails too much. I don't think it wasn't funny. I just loved it, and I wish we had more of it. So it sounds like I love this film in general, right? Nope. Meet the Robinsons is obviously really good, but it's got a lot of problems. Way more than Emperor's New Groove or Atlantis anyway. I thought that the bowler hat was a whatever character in the beginning, but that stupid hat is responsible for the worst climax in Disney history. And you know what? One of their most disastrous scenes as well. I don't think you understand how much I truly hate every single second of this dream sequence invasion. It is so infuriatingly awful that I could not believe what I was watching. Every bit of the tone whiplash going from Cars 1 to Cars 2 is, except it's all in one movie. Who cares about the tone? Who cares that this is supposedly supposed to be a serious scene? Who cares that the movie completely forgets about this important plot beat after it happens? It genuinely feels like the writers forgot how to write a movie. What were they even thinking? I also feel like Lewis's arc was improperly structured. Like, I love the family stuff, but because it happens in the second act, the pacing of this movie kind of becomes brave. But not as bad, in that the movie has two stories and keeps interrupting one to tell the other. Lewis has a really strong arc at the beginning of this movie, one that I was pretty invested in, but then the movie completely drops it in favor of talking about these underdeveloped adults that, despite being fun, don't really serve a purpose other than the fact that they keep moving forward. Like, yikes, this is repetitive. But I can't say that this arc is terrible because of that incredible scene at the end. Oh my god. You see what I mean? This movie has so many good elements, but then it just ruins them with one decision that causes the entire structure to tumble. But whatever, it's still worth your time, and despite its glaring flaws, its highs mostly make up for them. Mostly. Fantasia 2000 is weird. Like, obviously a movie that's just a leftover combination of animation's previous works is gonna be weird, but I don't even think that's the weirdest part of it. The weirdest part is how I kinda sorta really liked it. Those of you who saw the first video in this series, which none of you are allowed to see, will know that I wasn't the biggest fan of the original from the Golden Age. Seeing this movie for the first time, however, allowed me to fully appreciate some of the best segments within this movie, which are honestly some of my favorite shorts ever. But let's start with the bad. Yikes, the Sorcerer's Apprentice segment is boring. Like, on its own, it's pretty harmless, but it reminds me way too much of all the forgettable fluff that was found in the original Fantasia. I don't know, it matches the music well, I guess. It's just the worst one. Let's move on. Donald's arc was alright, but it fell short because of the competition. I feel like it had good scenery, but like the Sorcerer's Apprentice, it doesn't really hold your attention for that long. At least it was fun to look at. Alright, now to the great segments. And I'll just do a top 3. Number 3, the Flamingo Yo-Yo segment. Wow, this is just really adorable and creative with some great music on top of it, despite it being way too short. Number 2, the New Yorker Etch-a-Sketch segment. This is really great. I love how it depicts New York like this. It's got incredible animation, really cool character designs, great music, and maybe my favorite part, the style. Wow, what a shock. Watching this movie feels like you're being transported into New York City, and all the mini stores are incredibly fun to watch. I mean, come on, I'm a sucker for things like that. Number 1, the nature segment. Wow, what a fantastic way to finish this already really good film. Just an amazing, beautiful, heartwarming, beautiful, soul-lifting, beautiful, unforgettable experience. Basically, Fantasia 2000 is almost always really good, with sparks of incredibleness and sparks of... yeah. And I will say, it was really fun to watch a movie where the quality of the film shoots up and down like that. And while the original did have an amazing volcano segment, I think I prefer this movie overall.
Eclipse is no cause for alarm.
If there's one thing that I've learned from watching every single Disney movie, it's that sometimes when I look back at the older Disney movies, I find that a lot of people don't really give them the appreciation they deserve. But it doesn't happen as often as you might think. I mean, usually when a movie is forgotten, there's a good reason for it. And even when there's not, it's because the movie was surrounded by either really great or really terrible movies. I think that might have been what happened with Bolt, because it was released right in between Meet the Robinsons and Princess and the Frog, two very respected Disney movies. Bolt probably got lost in the shuffle, but I really think that people are overlooking this one. The concept alone is so well put together, especially in the beginning, that I was always wondering where the movie was gonna take it. Basically, Bolt is a dog actor who thinks he has special abilities, but is then accidentally set loose and has to deal with the fact that he's just a normal dog. So yes, it's like if Buzz Lightyear was the main character of Toy Story. Still, the reason this ends up being a stronger arc is because it's given the time and attention it deserves. Not to mention it actually manages to tie this idea with his human, something even the original Toy Story couldn't do. Plus, Bolt is paired with Mittens, a cat who can bring Bolt down to earth, but in a fresh way compared to Woody. Instead of throwing Bolt out of the window, screaming at him, and being, well, a jerk, Mittens is always trying to protect Bolt from being heartbroken when he realizes that Penny has replaced him. That scene with him trying to give the carrot back to Penny is so good. Mittens and Bolt have really amazing chemistry, and I think that their banter combined with Bolt's never-ending hilarious lines are what make the film so great. Not to mention this hamster, who might honestly be my favorite character in the movie. His timing and hijinks are perfect. Actually, now that I think about it, my favorite scene in the movie is him trying to break Bolt out of the pound. Between the warden and the wildly creative plan, there's just something so entertaining about the whole thing. I don't even know what I could say about this movie anymore. It feels like people don't give this enough credit for being as fun as it is. I get that 3 characters going on an adventure seems really basic and boring, which I'll admit is a trap this movie falls into from time to time. But it handles these tropes so incredibly well that I can't help but love it. Yeah, even after watching all of the post-Renaissance movies, Lilo and Stitch still takes the cake for being the best post-Renaissance movie. It's just a wonderful coming-of-age story between probably the best family and sister relationship we've ever gotten in Disney. And unlike every other movie on this list, it feels like most people agree. Like, this is the only movie on this list that's made a big impact on the Disney canon at large. And I guess if I had to pick one, I'm glad it's this one. The only thing that bothers me about this is how all the space stuff starts to get in the way of the family drama. And that sucks because one is so clearly better than the other. I don't particularly care for the 2 aliens that come to take Stitch back to his homeworld, but they're good enough. For what it's worth, I really like this space dictator. She's really intimidating and her henchman is great too. But this movie shines its brightest when it concentrates on Lilo and Nani, who are some of the best, most fleshed out characters Disney has ever made. Nani especially is one of the most realistic sibling characters I've seen in any movie, let alone any Disney movie. The way she has to assume a parental role after their parents died, and yet clearly can't take the pressure of raising an impossible to care for Lilo, it's really touching. This power struggle leads to one of the best scenes in Disney, and definitely the best in this movie. This scene shatters my heart every single time. And I think that's because it's the first time we've seen them genuinely connect with each other. Despite all the fighting and the arguing, despite Nani's attempts to reason with Lilo, despite Lilo saying that she hates Nani, they're still sisters. Now that an official is set to separate them, it really starts to hit them that they may never live together again. And this is the kind of emotion the entire film carries. I love watching this beautiful love story of sisterhood unfold, on top of the really fun space stuff. Overall, while I don't consider this to be top 5 Disney, it's still really powerful, and better than Melody Time and the Aristocats. So no, I really don't think this era stands out as being particularly awful. I mean, it's got some garbage. Chicken Little was still a truly awful movie, but it wasn't the worst movie Disney has ever made. And yeah, Home on the Range wasn't good, but this era also gave us films like Bolt. I really don't think the post-Renaissance is the worst era. People probably didn't like it because Disney's competitor, and I don't know if you've ever heard of this company, Pixar, was making films like The Incredibles, while Disney gave us... yeah. I think that's why a lot of people have gone back to these movies and said, these really aren't that bad. I really don't think the people who were watching it in theaters in the 2000s gave these movies a fair shot when they were competing with literally some of the best animated films ever made. I'm really glad people are enjoying these movies because they deserve to be enjoyed. Well, okay, maybe not that much. Yeah, you thought I was going to make an entire post-Renaissance ranking without talking about this, Oirich? Yeah. I don't get it either, guys.